Good evening, Texas. This is Pulse of Texas, and tonight we have Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, the voice of progressive Dallas. She's here to talk about her reforms, but are we ready for her ideas? Let's find out. Congresswoman, let's start with something pressing. Your bill to lower prescription drug prices through expanding Medicare sounds ambitious. But according to a 2025 Kaiser Family Foundation report, 60% of Texans over 50 worry it will raise taxes. Why should we believe your program won't burden the middle class? The question was designed to put Jasmine on the defensive immediately. She knew that an 8% rise in drug prices in 2025 and the economic instability following the 2024 inflation peak were sore points for Texans. Richard, I understand those concerns, she began. In my district, seniors are splitting pills because they can't afford a full dose. My bill isn't about raising taxes, it's about stopping pharmaceutical companies from profiting off people suffering. We can fund it by optimizing the Medicare budget and closing corporate tax loopholes. I'm ready to show the numbers if you're interested. Collins leaned forward, his smile turning dismissive. Numbers are fine, but let's talk reality. Your district is one of the poorest in Texas. You support the Harris administration's policies, which, according to an April 2025 Gallup poll, 55% of Texans see as ineffective due to the slow economic recovery. Don't you think your ideas about expanding government programs just encourage dependency? The studio audience, a few dozen strong, stirred. Jasmine felt the tension in the air thicken. The question carried an undertone that touched on racial stereotypes, as her district was predominantly African American and Latino. Her fingers gripped the edge of the table, but she forced herself to smile. Richard, when you talk about dependency, I hear accusations against people working 2 jobs who still can't afford insulin, she said, her voice steady but every word measured. In my district, veterans sleep in their cars. Teachers buy classroom supplies out of their own pockets. This isn't about handouts, it's about a system that leaves them behind. My bill is about giving them a chance, not charity. A chance sounds nice, but let's talk politics. You support police reform, which according to a 2025 Texas Tribune report, many Texans see as a threat to public safety. How will you convince our viewers that your ideas won't weaken their family's protection? Richard, I grew up in a pastor's family, and I was taught that safety isn't just about patrols on the streets, it's about trust between the community and the police, she said, her voice warming but not losing its strength. Reform is about training officers, transparency, supporting their mental health. I want Texans to feel protected, not intimidated. Let's discuss how to make that happen. Jasmine, you're dodging a direct answer. Your critics, including local police union leaders, claim your proposals, like redirecting police funding to social programs, will leave communities defenseless against rising crime. In Dallas, violent crime rose 12% in 2024, according to the police department. How do you explain to Texans why they should trust your reform when their streets are getting more dangerous? The studio audience fell silent. Richard, you cite statistics, but forget the people behind them, she began, her eyes locked on his. Yes, crime in Dallas rose in 2024. But did you mention that 70% of those crimes are tied to economic inequality, per the same police department? People steal because they can't feed their families. Youth join gangs because they lack access to education or jobs. My reform isn't about defunding police, as you claim. It's about giving communities resources, youth centers, healthcare, jobs. If we want safety, we need to invest in people, not just batons and handcuffs. The audience murmured. You talk about investments, Congresswoman, but that sounds like an excuse. Texans want to feel safe now, not wait for your social experiments to bear fruit. Do you admit your ideas might be too ambitious for the real world? Jasmine felt anger flare in her chest, but she suppressed it. Instead, she leaned slightly closer to Collins, her voice quieter but all the more piercing. Richard, the real world isn't your studio. where you can throw accusations for ratings. The real world is a mother who lost her son to street violence because her neighborhood has no youth programs. It's a veteran who can't afford medication and ends up on the street. My ideas are ambitious because the problems we ignore are massive. But I believe in Texans. We can be strong and still care for each other. The question is, are you even willing to try understanding what I'm saying? The audience erupted in applause, not loud, but heartfelt. Collins, caught off guard, widened his eyes briefly but quickly regained composure, leaning back in his chair. Nice speech, Congresswoman, but our viewers want specifics. Let's return to your drug price bill. You say you won't raise taxes, but where will the money come from? Are you planning, say, to cut the defense budget, as some of your progressive caucus colleagues have suggested? This was another jab, an attempt to tie Jasmine to radical ideas that could alienate the conservative audience. But Jasmine was done with his game. She knew Collins wasn't interested in real discussion. He wanted a spectacle. In that moment, she made a decision. She rose slowly from her chair, her movements calm but resolute. The humming cameras instantly focused on her. The audience fell silent, and Collins froze, his smile fading. "Richard, I came here to talk about people who are suffering, about real solutions," she said, her voice steady and filled with strength. "But you don't want to listen. You want labels, accusations, scandal. I won't play that game. Texans deserve better than a show that feeds them division instead of truth." She turned to the audience, her gaze softening. "I'll be in my district tomorrow at the community center on Martin Luther King Boulevard. If you want to talk about prescription drugs, safety, or the future, come. I'm ready to listen." With that, Jasmine unclipped her microphone and placed it on the table. The click echoed in the silent studio. She turned back to Collins, her eyes cold but composed. "One more thing, Richard. This show doesn't serve the people, it serves your ego. I'll be reaching out to the station's leadership to review the relevance of this program. If Pulse of Texas can't be a platform for real dialogue, it has no place on the air." She turned and walked off the stage, her steps confident, her back straight. The audience erupted in whispers and exclamations. Some clapped, others looked stunned. Collins sat, lips pressed tight, his face pale. Producer Linda Grace, standing near the control booth, pressed a hand to her mouth, unsure what to do. As Jasmine disappeared backstage, the studio buzzed like a hive. Operators exchanged glances, technicians whispered, and the audience began animatedly discussing what had just happened. In the corridor, Jasmine paused, leaning against the wall. Her heart pounded, but she felt an odd calm. She knew her words about shutting down the show weren't an empty threat. She had the media connections and political clout to raise the issue with KDFW-TV's leadership. As she stood there, Linda approached, clutching her tablet. Her face was a mix of anxiety and respect. "Jasmine, that was incredible. But are you serious about shutting down the show? This could cause a storm." Jasmine looked at her, her gaze firm. "Linda, I'm serious. If the media doesn't serve the people, it doesn't deserve to exist. I'll talk to the station's leadership tomorrow. Right now, I need to prepare for the community meeting." She turned and headed to the exit, where her assistant waited with a car. Outside the studio, Dallas glowed with lights, but for Jasmine, the real work was just beginning. She knew her actions would spark controversy, but she also knew they had awakened something in the audience, perhaps hope, perhaps a desire to be heard. And that was only the beginning. Backstage, Jasmine paused in the narrow corridor, leaning against the wall. Her heart was pounding, but a sense of calm strength spread through her chest. She knew her words about shutting down the show weren't just an impulsive reaction. It was a matter of principle. Pulse of Texas had been profiting off division rather than dialogue for years, and she couldn't tolerate it. Her navy suit remained impeccable, but her eyes burned with a resolve that neither fatigue nor tension could mask. Producer Linda Grace caught up with her, holding a tablet. Her face showed a mix of anxiety and awe. "Jasmine, what you did. It's already trending on social media. But are you really going to push for the show's cancellation? This could spark a scandal, and not everyone will be on your side. Jasmine looked at Linda, her gaze steady but calm. Linda, I'm not looking for a scandal. I want the media to serve the people, not fuel hostility. If Pulse of Texas can't be a platform for a real conversation, it doesn't belong on the air. I'll speak with KDFW-TV's leadership. And I won't stop. Linda nodded, though her eyes betrayed doubt. Jasmine turned and walked to the exit, where her assistant, Eric, waited with a black sedan. In the car, she pulled out her phone and saw dozens of messages, from colleagues, journalists, even constituents. On X, posts about her walkout were racking up thousands of reposts. Some called her a hero, others a radical. But Jasmine didn't read the comments. She knew the real battle would be fought not online, but in the real world. The next day, Jasmine stood in the community center on Martin Luther King Boulevard, in the heart of her district. The room was packed. Seniors in faded baseball caps, young mothers with children, veterans in worn jackets. The air smelled of coffee from cheap plastic cups and fresh paper from handouts about her bill. Outside, cars hummed and muffled choir singing drifted from a nearby church. The atmosphere was vibrant but tense. People had come not just to listen, but to question. Jasmine, dressed in a simple white blouse and black pants, stood at the microphone. Her voice was warm but confident. Yesterday, I walked out of that studio because I refused to play a game where our problems are turned into entertainment, she said, scanning the room. But I'm here to talk with you. About prescription drugs, safety, our future. What's on your mind? I'm ready to listen. An older man with a gray beard, wearing a faded shirt with a Vietnam War emblem, raised his hand first. Congresswoman, I'm a veteran. My meds cost $400 a month. Will your bill really help people like me? Jasmine nodded, her face softening. Yes, sir, my bill will force pharmaceutical companies to lower prices on essential drugs and expand Medicare to cover more costs. We already capped insulin prices in 2023. That's just the start. I'm fighting for you. A middle-aged woman with tired eyes raised her hand. What about safety? In my neighborhood, there's a shooting almost every week. You talk about police reform, but how will that protect my kids? Jasmine stepped closer to the edge of the stage, her voice growing even more earnest. I understand your fear. Police reform isn't about cutting back, it's about improving. We can invest in officer training, in youth programs to prevent crime. In my district, we've opened 2 youth centers, and teen crime there dropped 15%. It works, but we need more. The room buzzed with approving murmurs. Jasmine answered questions for another hour, listening to stories of loss, struggle, and hope. People who had initially eyed her with skepticism began to nod, clap, even smile. She didn't promise miracles, but her words, specific, backed by facts, resonated. Meanwhile, at KDFW-TV's headquarters in downtown Dallas, another drama was unfolding. True to her word, Jasmine had sent a formal letter to the station's CEO, demanding a review of Pulse of Texas's format. Backed by several local community organizations and even a city council member, her letter caused a firestorm in the office. Social media was ablaze. The video of Jasmine's walkout went viral, amassing millions of views on X. The hashtag Listen to Jasmine trended in Texas, and a petition to cancel the show gathered thousands of signatures. Richard Collins, sensing his position slipping, gave a hasty interview to another channel, accusing Jasmine of political pressure on free speech. But his words were drowned out by the wave of support for Jasmine. Viewers, especially older ones who saw her community center appearance, began writing to KDFW-TV, demanding more programs focused on dialogue, not conflict. A week later, Jasmine got a call from Linda Grace. Her voice was quiet, but filled with respect. Jasmine, I just came from a meeting. The leadership decided to cancel Pulse of Texas. They don't want to risk the station's reputation. But They're also planning a new show focused on community issues. And they want you to be a consultant. Jasmine, sitting in her office, surrounded by stacks of documents and photos of her district, smiled. Linda, I'll think about it. But only if that show is about people, not ratings. Months later, Jasmine stood on the steps of the Texas Capitol in Austin, announcing progress on her prescription drug bill. Behind her stood veterans, nurses, seniors, the people whose stories she'd shared at the community center. The bill hadn't passed yet, but it had gained support from several Republicans who had previously opposed it. Her speech was broadcast across Texas, and this time, no one tried to interrupt her. That evening, Jasmine sat in a downtown Dallas cafe, sipping herbal tea. Outside, cars hummed, and the first stars twinkled in the sky. Her assistant, Eric, sent her an article from the Dallas Morning News. Jasmine Crockett changes the game. How one congresswoman made Texas listen. She smiled, but didn't read it. Her thoughts were with the people who came to her at the community center, with those still fighting. She knew there was much work ahead. Canceling Pulse of Texas was just a small victory, and her bill was only a first step. But in that moment, looking at Dallas's lights, Jasmine felt something had shifted, not just in the city, but in the hearts of those who once doubted they'd be heard. And that was the start of something bigger, not a revolution, but a quiet, unbreakable hope.